Have you ever noticed how some people enter your life with such brilliance that you believe they were meant for you, only for them to leave one day, leaving a void that feels impossible to fill? According to Carl Jung, not everyone who appears in your life is a divine gift. Some are meant to love, teach, or accompany you for a period. Others serve as mirrors, reflecting the unhealed aspects of your unconscious. When their role concludes, the self, or what Jung described as the divine essence within, begins to act. People are not removed to punish, but to free. This marks the start of the individuation process, where the soul separates from old attachments to return to its true center. The turmoil, unease, or seemingly random signs you encounter are not coincidental. They are the language of the self, signaling that it is time to release what no longer belongs to you, holding on to what your soul has outgrown pulls you away from your path of evolution. Yet, when you courageously let go, even through tears, you surrender to something more divine, the profound order of the unconscious, as Jung described it. So, if it feels like God is taking someone out of your life, don't despair. Watch this video carefully until the end, because it may not signify an ending, but rather the beginning of your salvation. There's a type of relationship that doesn't wound you with arguments or end with clear farewells, but gradually dissolves into prolonged uncertainty. You can't pinpoint why you feel unsettled, why every interaction leaves your mind restless, as if an invisible current stirs within your heart that you cannot name. You attempt to rationalize it, reminding yourself that every relationship faces rough patches. Yet deep down, you sense that something is not right, Jung once said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Inner turmoil is not the enemy, it is a signal from the unconscious. The first sign that your soul is preparing for change. When a relationship steals your peace, it isn't solely because the other person is unsuitable. It is because the energy between two souls has fallen out of alignment, in Jungian psychology. God symbolizes the self, the divine essence within, holding order and wholeness. Here, we use God as a metaphor for the self, the center of balance between consciousness and the unconscious. When a relationship triggers chaos, it reflects a disturbance of the self. Your life energy, what Jung called libido, is being drawn into a place that no longer nourishes your soul. Your inner light dims, inspiration fades, and the connection to yourself weakens. Being near them feels like drifting from your center, like a compass thrown off by a magnetic field, its needles spinning uncontrollably. Many confuse love with attachment rooted in fear, believing that leaving someone means losing part of themselves. But Jung reminded us, one never loses what truly belongs to the soul. One only loses the illusions the ego clings to. It is the ego, the part seeking control, clinging to the familiar, that creates inner turmoil. Some people appear in our lives not to love us, but to reveal our inner imbalances, acting as mirrors reflecting unhealed wounds. With them, you lose touch with yourself, question your worth, and constantly strive to be worthy of love. True love does not create chaos. Jung described true love as the union of two souls who understand each other's shadows and still choose to remain together. If a relationship leaves you lost in darkness, it is no longer love. It is psychological karma, a lesson your soul must release. Turmoil is the prelude to transformation. Just as water boiling signals a state change, chaos arises when the soul outgrows old patterns. Confusion, disorientation, or feeling unlike yourself is not inherently negative. It marks the beginning of awakening. God does not generate chaos to punish, but to dissolve illusions, helping you distinguish reality from falsehood, love from dependency. Relationships aligned with the self bring clarity, peace, and energy for growth, while those dominated by the ego leave heaviness, confusion, and exhaustion. Sometimes divine answers arrive not as miracles, but as silence. You are not told directly that someone is unsuitable. Instead, you feel drained, foggy, and depleted, the soul's language speaking in sensations rather than words. The longer you stay attached to someone who no longer resonates with your soul, it's the more disoriented you become. When this ambiguity persists, it transforms into a silent but undeniable weight. A call from the self to return to your center. Sign 2. Relentless tension and the weight of burdensome. Relationships don't collapse in a dramatic storm, they slowly unravel. Day by day, like a rope stretched tight. It doesn't snap, but gradually suffocates the spirit. You feel drained without knowing why. Every conversation leaves you more exhausted instead of energized. Every encounter depletes you rather than replenishing your strength. Carl Jung once said, "We don't solve our problems. We outgrow them." Perhaps the issue is no longer with the other person, but with the fact that your soul has grown beyond what this relationship can hold. When God intends to remove someone from your life, the exit is rarely abrupt. Instead, you feel the heaviness of attachment. So the weight itself pushes you to let go. In Jungian analysis, every relationship is a projection. We love, resent, or idealize others, not necessarily because of who they truly are, but because they mirror parts of ourselves we've disowned. Feeling weary around someone may mean you are carrying both their psychological burdens and your own neglected inner aspects. Each time you try to heal, save, or understand them, you may actually be attempting to rescue parts of your own unconscious self that you've never faced directly in this way. Love becomes a burden. You're no longer loving the person, they become a container for the unresolved parts of your soul. Consider those who always feel responsible for rescuing others. Many were raised in environments where love was tied to sacrifice. You were only loved if you endured. As people mature, they often gravitate toward those they feel compelled to save. Unconsciously repeating old patterns with the hope that this time the outcome will be different. Carl Jung referred to these unresolved emotional patterns in the unconscious, which drive us to relive the same experiences until the underlying lesson is learned. The fatigue you experience is not merely physical or emotional, it is soul exhaustion. The burden of carrying an unfinished story within you. Take a moment to tune into your body. Are you genuinely loving, or merely shouldering a weight your soul can no longer bear? Some love to the point of losing sight of personal boundaries, taking on the pain of others as their own responsibility. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If a reaction occurs, both are transformed. But if a relationship only dissolves you without creating transformation, it has become a closed system, one giving endlessly while the other only absorbs. When energy is not exchanged fairly, it creates a sense of heaviness, like breathing in a room with thin air, where every inhalation feels like a struggle. If your energy is invested in connections that no longer nurture life, your body and mind will signal this imbalance. You may feel depleted, restless, sleepless, or experience a deep, inexplicable emptiness. This is not mere low mood, it is your soul asserting its need for freedom. You may have believed that fatigue is proof of deep love, that profound suffering is a mark of true devotion. Yet on the spiritual path, some pain arises not from love, but from resisting reality. When your inner self, your divine essence, recognizes that a connection no longer serves you, it begins to withdraw energy. No matter how hard you try, you feel heavy and drained, as if swimming against a current. This is not failure, it is a signal of misalignment between your soul and your choices. God never places you in a relationship that depletes your soul. The purpose is not to test your endurance, but to guide you toward understanding that genuine love is never a burden. Sign 3. Soul in sometimes. God doesn't speak in words. He speaks through a subtle unease. You may not be able to explain why being near someone feels off. It's not a loud or intense signal, it's just a delicate vibration, a slight misalignment, like a single note out of tune on a piano. You might try to dismiss it, telling yourself it's just overthinking. But the closer you grow to that person, the more your inner balance shifts. Sleep becomes restless, and silence feels heavier. Carl Jung once observed, "The unconscious is not merely evil by nature. It is also the source of the highest good. Not only dark, but also light." In analytical psychology, this kind of unease isn't random. It's the soul responding when your energy is misaligned. The unconscious perceives this misalignment long before your rational mind does. Unease acts as the spiritual system's early warning. It's like a light flashing on the soul's dashboard. Yet many people today have lost the ability to interpret these subtle signals. Logic is trusted over feeling, reason over intuition. As a result, we ignore the soul's red flags, only recognizing their importance after everything unravels. That initial discomfort, in reality, was God's way of saying, "Stop." A woman once shared her experience whenever she met her partner. Her heart raced not from excitement, but anxiety. Though he had done nothing wrong, she constantly felt as if something might break. Her mind said he was a good man, but her body and soul disagreed. In Jungian terms, this is intuition, a function of the higher unconscious, arising not from fear, but from the soul's instinctive wisdom. Intuition doesn't communicate through words. It expresses itself through subtle signals: a shiver, a quickened heartbeat, a nameless emptiness. Ignoring these sensations is a betrayal of your own soul. Jung described intuition as a form of knowing, not through logical thought, but through energetic resonance. When your soul encounters someone incompatible, the energies clash, like two instruments slightly out of tune. Even if the interaction seems appealing, you still sense the dissonance. This discomfort is the soul's natural response to energetic misalignment. If you continue to stay in such situations, that discomfort can escalate into anxiety and eventually mental exhaustion. Think of moments when you instantly felt unsafe around someone without understanding why. Often, that feeling is remarkably accurate. The soul, connected to the depths of the collective unconscious, detects human energy, sensing authenticity, deception, or hidden shadows. Jung believed that through this collective unconscious, souls interact beyond words. When someone's energy is incompatible, your unconscious reacts immediately. In spiritual terms, this is the Holy Spirit. In psychological terms, it is the self, guiding and protecting you. But this protection only works if you trust it. When you rationalize it away, thinking perhaps, "I'm too sensitive," you let the ego overshadow the soul. When the ego dominates, the self grows silent, and you move through chaos until lessons are learned. Often through pain, Jung said, when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Ignoring the soul's signals brings consequences: betrayal, heartbreak, or injuries, messages from the unconscious. Unease is a divine gift, a spiritual compass that points toward the light. Every tremor of the soul is not weakness, but a warning from inner wisdom. You are veering away from your center. If you pause, listen, and trust that inner signal, you will discover that God has never been silent. He simply speaks the language of the soul, a language only those who are still enough can hear. Sign 4. Being pulled away from your life's purpose. In the previous section, you noticed the soul's subtle warning, the quiet, persistent sense of unease. Here we move to the next stage. At this point, when the soul begins losing direction, unease is no longer just a signal. It becomes a consequence. Being drawn away from your path is more than a challenging relationship, is a spiritual deviation. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." Each time we are pulled from our center, we stop living from the soul and start reacting to external energies that aren't our own. Consider this. Once you had dreams, passions, and plans that ignited you. Perhaps you loved reading, writing, drawing, or exploring. But since entering a relationship, those sparks fade. Instead, you may find yourself trapped in cycles of emotion, waiting for messages, fearing abandonment, constantly checking if you are still loved. What is lost in this process is more than focus. It is connection to your creative essence. Jung explained that when libido or life energy is diverted from the self into an external object, spiritual dryness follows. We may think we are loving, but in reality, we are pouring vital energy into something that no longer nourishes the soul. Have you felt this? The harder you cling, the further you drift from yourself. Try writing it down or speaking it aloud. Reflect on what you have lost by loving someone so deeply that you forget yourself. Perhaps in that reflection, you may glimpse the soul's path back to its center. A common example: when you start dating someone, you suddenly realize you have little time for yourself. Practices that once nurtured your soul, prayer, meditation, creative pursuits, your energy is entirely consumed in sustaining the connection. Jung would describe this as losing your psychological axis, the link between consciousness and the unconscious, between you and your true self. When that axis weakens, emptiness, anxiety, and disorientation follow, not because the other person is wrong, but because your soul is being pulled from its orbit. Some people come into your life not to love, but to test whether you can maintain your path. They act like headwinds, revealing how easily your faith, goals, and peace can be swept away. Jung observed, "The world will ask who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you. If you allow yourself to be defined by them, you lose direction." Unable to distinguish the soul's voice from the echoes of loneliness and fear, disorientation does not always come from bad people. It can come from right people at the wrong time. They appear when you are not yet ready to love without losing yourself. Instead of growing together, you may lose your own soul in the process. God does not punish you for this. Instead, divine guidance withdraws what pulls you away from your essence. Relationships that once felt alive may grow dim. Conversations may feel hollow, and efforts to connect can become exhausting. This is not random. Closure it is divine rebalancing. When you feel you are no longer yourself, see it as a signal. The soul is calling you home. Jung referred to this as the turning point, where the self begins to reclaim leadership. Do not fear when circumstances dissolve. Dissolution is necessary for your true purpose to emerge. God does not remove someone to make you lonely. He clears the way for new resonance where your energy is renewed, it's not depleted. Sign 5. Rejection as redirection. A remarkable thing about the self is that it never allows us to stray indefinitely. When the soul veers off course, it self-corrects through life events. And sometimes this correction comes in the form of rejection. Holding on to something that has fulfilled its purpose becomes too heavy, and the universe compels us to release it. From Jung's perspective, rejection is not failure, it is a form of divine intervention. Life unfolds according to the unconscious order. When a relationship, a job, or a dream falls apart despite our efforts, it is not fate being cruel, but the self signaling that this path is no longer meant for us. While we see only a closed door, the soul already knows. Another door has opened in the shadows. Imagine driving on a familiar road, confident it leads the right way, only to encounter a dead end. Frustration and anger arise, yet unknown to you, the road ahead is collapsing. This obstruction is not punishment. It is the soul's instinct for preservation. Rejection functions in the same way. It stops us before we harm ourselves. If we step back with patience, we can perceive the larger picture, the self redirecting us toward a more meaningful path. Even if it first appears as darkness, in Jungian psychoanalysis, rejection often aligns with meaningful coincidences, repeated obstacles, moments when progress seems impossible. Signal synchronization between the unconscious and the outer world. It is a message to change direction. Jung called this the guidance of an underlying order. What seems like a blockage is, in fact, a deeper logic beyond reason. For example, losing a job may feel catastrophic, but months later, a new opportunity may emerge, revealing hidden talents. Being left by a loved one may feel devastating, yet in time, the experience teaches us to love without losing ourselves. Jung would see this as a symbol of rebirth. External breakdowns are forms. The essence lies in the ego's death, making way for soul maturation. The pain of rejection stems not from losing someone, but from the ego being wounded. The ego believes it knows what is best, while the self knows what the soul truly needs. When rejected, the ego feels humiliated. To the self, it is liberation. These opposing forces create every external rift as an inner battle between human will and divine will. Notice how life gradually withdraws energy from relationships that have run their course. Conversations become dull, emotions fade, and attempts to repair them exhaust us. The universe closes the door gradually, not to punish, but to protect us from the wrong path. Rejection tests faith. It asks whether we continue clinging to what is dissolving or trust the invisible hand reshaping our lives. Jung believed that all suffering has purpose. When we stop seeing loss as failure and view it as a stage of transformation, the soul unfolds like a seed cracking its shell. God does not take away to punish, but to make space for what is new, even after repeated warnings. The remarkable thing is that the soul rarely shuts the door abruptly. Before a collapse occurs, it sends subtle signals, a gentle knock on the door of consciousness. The problem is that most people either fail to notice these signs or consciously choose to ignore them. When the unconscious sends warnings, they do not disappear. They intensify until they manifest as a crisis. The universe never stays silent. It communicates through repetition. If certain problems, types of people, or emotional patterns keep appearing in your life, it is not a coincidence. These recurring experiences are the unconscious trying to make itself seen. Jung referred to these as psychological loops that persist until we awaken. For instance, if you are consistently drawn to individuals incapable of love, or repeatedly face situations where you feel abandoned, it is not life punishing you, it is life presenting a lesson you have yet to grasp. Each repetition offers an opportunity for awareness. If ignored, the pattern returns in different, often more painful forms. Be honest with yourself. How many soul warnings have you noticed but quietly walked past? Reflecting on this is not to dwell on pain, but to acknowledge how courageous your past self was, even without fully knowing how to listen to your inner voice. The soul rarely communicates through dramatic events. It speaks in subtle ways, a sense of unease, a peculiar dream, a conversation that tightens your chest, someone repeatedly breaking promises, a nagging suspicion, or an unnecessary argument that leaves lingering tension. These are the unconscious speaking. Jung emphasized that the unconscious communicates through symbols. When consciousness ignores these messages, the symbols grow stronger until they demand attention. Dreams of being lost, chased, or falling are not random. They are warnings that your current path may be misaligned. Jung described a clinical case of a patient who repeatedly dreamed of a sinking ship, yet insisted in waking life that she was fine. Only after her relationship ended did she realize the dream wasn't predicting the future, it was revealing a truth about the present she refused to acknowledge. Dreams are the soul's most honest language. In every repetition carries not just a message, but a call for attention. In daily life, warnings often come through the people around you. A friend advises you to step away from that relationship. A family member says you look drained. These are not just personal opinions. They can be reflections of the collective unconscious, where other souls mirror what you hesitate to admit. Yet most people only pay attention when the damage is already done. If the same issue appears with different people, it is a clear indication that you are facing an internal pattern. A young woman once explained that no matter how many partners she changed, the ending was always the same: abandonment. She believed she was cursed. But through deeper reflection, she realized she repeatedly chose partners who made her feel she had to earn love. Abandonment was not destiny. It was a recurring signal pushing her to recognize her core wound, the fear of not being loved. Jung believed that every time we ignore the unconscious, the shadow grows stronger. And each time we pay attention, the light of awareness expands. So when a warning appears again, do not ask, "Why is this happening again?" Instead ask, "What is it trying to show me?" The unconscious does not punish. It only seeks acknowledgement. Once you face it, the lesson fades, just as darkness disappears. When you turn on a light, thank you for staying with me and listening to the quiet messages of the soul. If anything in this video resonates with you, perhaps it is not coincidence, but your deeper self inviting you to return to your inner path. Stay until the end. This journey still holds another layer, where we will explore a final truth. When God removes someone from your life, He opens a new door within you. And if you wish to continue exploring topics like this together, leave a small sign, a like, or a subscription, so I know you are here. Still walking this path of awakening with me. Sign 7. When certain people hinder your growth, some relationships hold you back. Those recurring warnings aren't mere coincidences. They're the soul's final attempt to guide you before it must take stronger measures, halting your progress entirely. When we ignore these signals and cling to connections that have lost meaning, the soul cannot move forward. That's when life begins to feel stuck. Creativity fades, inspiration wanes, and joy becomes scarce. You don't necessarily decline noticeably, but growth ceases. Life stagnates. Like a once powerful river blocked by an unseen stone, people who were once our source of light can eventually dim our own. When you start withdrawing, stop dreaming, stop learning, or resist growth just to preserve harmony, it's a clear signal. Your soul is being constrained. In Jungian psychology, the self operates through expansion, continually urging us to move beyond old patterns to achieve wholeness. If you are in a relationship where growth is impossible, the self is blocked while the ego clings to familiarity out of fear. Imagine a tree trying to grow, tied at the roots. It survives, produces leaves, but cannot rise higher. The unconscious behaves the same way energy persists. But when obstructed, it stagnates, creating frustration, fatigue, or depression. Jung observed that many of his patients suffered not from lack of love, but from being disconnected from the soul's natural path. Living in an environment that no longer aligns with your inner truth causes the soul to contract. Like a flower deprived of light. Consider someone in a long-term relationship who knows they're unhappy but cannot leave. They rationalize, "At least we have each other," or "No one is perfect." Yet deep down, they recognize they've stopped growing. Reading, learning, dreaming, they shrink. Safe, yet fading. Jung described this as a compromise with the shadow, half-living, clinging to what is outdated out of fear. Growth cannot happen in such stagnation. When life energy is blocked for too long, seeks release through crisis, breakdown, or an inexplicable emptiness. In spiritual terms, people say, God removes to save. In Jungian terms, the self dismantles old structures to make space for renewal. Feeling stuck isn't weakness. It's the transition between the old and new. It's the silence before a new version of yourself emerges. Instead of asking, "Why can't I move forward?" ask, "What or who is holding me back?" The answer may reveal the threshold of liberation. Every person you meet reflects a part of yourself. When someone impedes your growth, they may mirror your own unconscious fear of change. By facing it and releasing either the person or the part of you clinging to them, energy flows again like a river. Once a stone is removed, it resumes its course naturally. The self never confines. It never leads to a dead end. Feeling blocked is not destiny, it signals that this chapter has ended. When you dare to let go of what restrains you, you encounter Jung's profound truth. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to become. Sign 8. Peace returns when they leave eventually. A gentle moment arrives, often unnoticed at first. Either they leave, or you finally find the courage to let go. In the emptiness that initially feels unbearable, a quiet begins to settle. The constant swirl of thoughts fades, and the heaviness in your chest each morning lifts. The world remains the same, yet within, a new balance is forming. As Jung observed, in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. The peace that follows turmoil is no accident. It signals that consciousness and the unconscious have realigned, and that the soul has absorbed its lesson. When someone exits your life and relief replaces grief, it is not indifference. It is the restoration of energy once trapped in obsession, expectation, or suffering. As the self regains control, tension dissolves. Like a wound that stops bleeding, you recognize you no longer need anyone to save you or validate your worth. This peace is not the stillness of the external world, but the restored equilibrium within. The unconscious no longer struggles to be acknowledged, and the ego no longer strives to prove itself. When these aspects reconcile, the soul achieves wholeness and peace returns. How do you know you have truly let go? The answer is simple. when your peace no longer depends on them, when you no longer seek an apology, understanding, or their return. When thoughts of them bring no tension, only gratitude, that is when the soul has healed. Jung taught that the self never severs without leaving a gift, deeper self-awareness. You understand why you once clung, feared loss, or believed you could not live without someone. In that understanding, you break free not just from one person, but from years of psychological patterns in Jungian terms. Peace is a dynamic balance between the soul's opposing poles, shadow and light, wound and gratitude, ego and essence. When someone leaves, you are no longer pulled to extremes. No more judgments of right or wrong, only recognition that everything had a purpose. They arrived to reveal a wound and departed to create space for growth. In that space, clarity emerges. Every experience serves to make the soul more complete. When God intends a lesson, suffering is not the only gift. Peace follows as confirmation. Peace rewards those who traverse darkness and endure loss without losing faith. After every parting, something within you is born, a quieter, stronger inner voice. This is more than emotional recovery. It is the soul maturing. When peace follows departure, it reflects the unfolding of your true self. Only when the false leaves can the authentic emerge. Peace is not earned through endurance, it confirms your return to yourself. God does not take away. He removes what blocks your wholeness. When a chapter closes, what remains is not emptiness, but the renewed shape of you. View departures as rites of passage. You step out of the old mirror, leaving behind worn roles, and reclaim your place as guardian of your inner fire. From this center, no external sign is needed to confirm the path. You feel it in the stillness of your heart. Treat the past with kindness, like tucking away a letter. No tearing, no constant rereading. One morning, in a silence that asks nothing, you will understand. Nothing was taken. You were returned whole, serene, and aligned with yourself.